I still remember the morning light that spilled through the curtains, soft and golden, touching the side of his face as he slept beside me. For a moment, it felt like the world was at peace, like nothing could ever break this quiet perfection. But that's the strange thing about pain. It doesn't announce itself. It just arrives, silently, and changes everything you thought was permanent. My name is Lena, and for 7 years, I believed I was living the kind of love people write about in novels. My husband, Ethan, was my best friend, my laughter, my home. We met in college, sharing cheap coffee and late-night talks about dreams we were too young to understand. He was the kind of man who remembered the small things, the way I liked my tea, the songs that made me cry, the way I always forgot my umbrella. For years, we built our little world together. Our apartment was small, but it felt alive. Photos of road trips covered the fridge. Our cat, Milo, used to curl up on Ethan's lap every evening. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, until the day I found his phone. It wasn't like I went looking for anything. He'd left it on the couch, the screen lighting up with a message. It said, "Last night was beautiful. I can't stop thinking about you." I froze. For a second, my brain refused to process it. I laughed nervously, telling myself it must be a misunderstanding. But curiosity, the kind that kills every illusion, made me open his messages. There they were. Weeks of texts, photos, late-night calls, words that once belonged to me, now written for someone else. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as if my body was trying to reject the truth. My heart felt like it was collapsing from the inside. That night, when he came home, I couldn't look at him. He smelled like her perfume, and I hated myself for recognizing it. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, his voice soft, unaware that my world had already shattered. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone in his face, to ask why. But I didn't. I just stood there, silent, watching the man I loved pretend nothing was wrong. That's the cruelest part of betrayal. It makes you doubt your own reality. For days I kept pretending. I cooked dinner, I laughed at his jokes, but every time he smiled, all I saw were the lies hiding behind it. At night, I would lie awake beside him, wondering if she was thinking of him too. I used to believe that love could fix anything, that if you just cared enough, people would stay. But love doesn't always win. Sometimes it breaks you in ways you can't explain to anyone. One evening, while washing dishes, Ethan came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. It was a habit I used to love. But now, it felt wrong. I could feel the ghost of another woman between us. He whispered, "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" I turned to look at him. His eyes, those same blue eyes I used to drown in, looked so sincere that for a moment I almost wanted to believe him. But the truth was sitting heavy in my chest. "I'm fine," I lied, because I wasn't ready to face the storm. Days passed and I started to detach. I moved through our home like a stranger. I stopped waiting for him to call when he was late. I stopped asking where he'd been. Silence became my survival. But one night, I broke. He was asleep, his phone buzzing again. I picked it up and there she was, Sophie, a photo of them together, her head resting on his shoulder, the same shoulder I used to cry on. I didn't throw the phone this time. I just sat on the floor and cried until my heart went numb. In the morning, I packed a small bag. Just a few clothes, my diary, and the necklace he'd given me on our anniversary. I didn't have a plan, just the need to breathe somewhere that didn't smell like his betrayal. When he woke up, he saw the bag. His confusion was almost insulting. "Lena, what's going on?" I held up his phone. "You tell me." His face drained of color. The silence between us screamed louder than any fight could. "I can explain," he said, stepping closer. But I stepped back. "Don't. You'll only make it worse." Tears filled his eyes, and for a second, I saw guilt. Real guilt. But it was too late. "I never meant to hurt you," he whispered. I smiled bitterly. That's the thing about betrayal, Ethan. No one ever means to. I walked out, leaving behind the smell of his cologne, the warmth of our memories, and a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. I stayed with my friend Claire for a while. She tried to comfort me, telling me I deserved better, that I was strong. But I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. I kept thinking of the way he laughed, the way his hand fit perfectly in mine. I hated that I still missed him. Nights were the worst. I'd stare at my phone, half expecting a message, half terrified of getting one. My heart wanted him to call, but my mind prayed he wouldn't. One evening I opened my diary. I started writing, not about him, but about myself, about how I felt invisible, about how I had given so much of myself to someone who forgot how to hold it. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't cry while writing. I just felt lighter. I didn't know then, but that was the beginning of something. The start of me finding myself again. 3 weeks had passed since I walked out of that apartment. 3 weeks of silence from Ethan. 3 weeks of trying to unlearn the sound of his laughter echoing in my head. The first week felt like drowning. I kept waiting for my phone to ring, for him to show up at my door, to tell me that everything had been a nightmare. But the silence stretched, cruel and endless, and I realized he wasn't coming. Not yet. I spent my days at Claire's small apartment. It was cluttered but warm, filled with the smell of cinnamon candles and the sound of her little dog's footsteps. Every night she'd make tea and say, "You'll heal, Lena. Maybe not today, but you will." I wanted to believe her. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face. Not the man who cheated, but the one who used to look at me like I was his whole world. That memory hurt more than the betrayal. One evening, while I was sitting on the balcony watching the sunset, my phone lit up. Ethan. I froze. My heart raced like it was trying to escape my chest. For a full minute, I just stared at his name on the screen. Then before I could stop myself, I answered. "Lena," he said softly. His voice cracked like he hadn't slept in days. "Please, don't hang up." I didn't say a word. I know you don't want to talk to me, he continued, but I need to see you. "Please, just once. Why?" I finally asked, my voice trembling. "So you can tell me more lies?" "No," he whispered. "So I can tell you the truth." There was something in his tone, broken, desperate. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him the next day. Not because I forgave him, but because I needed closure. The next afternoon, I found myself standing outside the coffee shop where we'd first met 8 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. It was the place where everything had begun, and now it felt like the place where everything would end. Ethan was already there. His hair was a little longer, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes heavy with regret. When he saw me, he stood up too quickly, knocking over his coffee cup. Typical Ethan, always clumsy. "Always trying too hard. Lena," he said, his voice low, "you look different." "I am different," I replied, sitting down. He sighed, rubbing his hands together. "I don't know where to start." "Start with why," I said coldly. "Why her?" He looked down. "I don't know, it just happened," I laughed bitterly. "Things like that don't just happen, Ethan. You make them happen." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I made the worst mistake of my life. I was stupid, selfish. She made me feel like I wasn't failing at everything. Work was falling apart and I thought I was losing you too. You were losing me," I snapped. "But not because of work. Because you stopped showing up. You stopped talking. You stopped trying." He looked up, eyes wet. "I know. And I hate myself for it." Silence hung between us like thick smoke. The sound of spoons clinking against coffee cups filled the space where our laughter used to be. "Do you love her?" I finally asked. He shook his head quickly. "No, it wasn't love. It was confusion. It was loneliness. But I swear, Lena, it meant nothing compared to what we had." "What we had," I repeated. Past tense. "You destroyed it." He reached across the table, his hand trembling. "Please let me make it right. I'll do anything." For a second, I almost let him touch me. My heart screamed for the comfort of his hand, the warmth I still remembered. But my mind stopped me. I pulled back. "You can't fix what you broke, Ethan. You can only learn to live with it." He swallowed hard. "I still love you." "Love isn't supposed to hurt like this," I whispered. "If it does, then maybe it's not love anymore." Tears welled up in his eyes. He looked lost, like a man begging for forgiveness that would never come. I miss you, Lena. Every second. I can't sleep. I can't think. I keep seeing your face when I close my eyes. I wanted to tell him I missed him too. That I still woke up reaching for the space beside me. But the truth was, missing him didn't mean I wanted him back. I'll always care about you, I said quietly. But I can't go back to being the woman who cried herself to sleep while you were texting someone else. He lowered his head, and for the first time, he didn't argue. Maybe he finally understood. We sat there for a few minutes in silence. The barista called someone's name. The doorbell chimed as new customers walked in. And just like that, life around us went on, while ours stood still. When I got up to leave, Ethan whispered, "You're still wearing the necklace I gave you." I touched it instinctively. The silver chain felt heavy against my skin. "Yeah," I said. "It reminds me of the girl I used to be." "And who's that?" he asked. "The one who believed in you," I replied softly. "But she's gone now." And with that, I walked out of the cafe, leaving behind the ghost of what we once were. That night, I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. Instead, I felt a strange peace, like I had finally taken my first breath after being underwater for too long. I realized that forgiveness wasn't about letting him back into my life. It was about freeing myself from the anger that had been consuming me. The next morning, I deleted his number. Not in rage, but in acceptance. When Claire saw me smile for the first time in weeks, she said, "You're glowing again." And maybe I was. Not because I was over him, but because I was finally starting to remember who I was before him. That evening, I took a walk alone through the city. The air was crisp, the sky a soft orange. For the first time in a long time, I noticed the world again. The laughter of strangers, the sound of traffic, the scent of fresh bread from a nearby bakery. I passed a couple holding hands, laughing at something small, and I didn't feel bitterness. I just felt human healing isn't loud. It doesn't happen all at once. It comes quietly, in moments when you least expect it. I wasn't healed yet, but I was on my way. And for now, that was enough. The days that followed my meeting with Ethan felt strangely calm, not peaceful, but quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm destroys everything in its path. You just stand there, looking at the wreckage, unsure where to begin. I started waking up earlier. I'd make coffee, open the curtains, and let the sunlight touch my face. For months, I'd avoided mornings. They reminded me of all the breakfasts I used to make for us, all the smiles exchanged across the kitchen counter. But now I forced myself to face them. I had to. Claire noticed the change. "You're healing," she said one afternoon as we folded laundry together. "You might not feel it yet, but you are." I nodded, though part of me still felt hollow. Healing wasn't a straight road. It was messy, unpredictable, filled with sharp edges. Some days I woke up strong, ready to face the world. Other days I found myself scrolling through old photos, hating myself for still missing him. I didn't delete the pictures. Not yet. I wasn't ready to erase those pieces of my past, because they were still pieces of me. A week later, I received an email from Ethan. Subject, "I need to talk." I stared at it for a long time, unsure whether to open it. Curiosity won, he wrote. "I'm not asking for you to come back. I just want you to know I've started therapy. I'm trying to understand why I hurt the person I love the most. You deserve to know that I'm not the same man anymore." For a moment, I just sat there, reading those lines over and over. The old Lena, the one who still believed in fairy tales, might have taken that as hope. But the woman I'd become knew better. Still, a part of me felt proud of him, not for me, but for himself. Maybe he was finally doing what I had begged him to do for years, to face his demons. I replied simply, "I'm glad you're getting help. Take care of yourself, Ethan." No heart emojis, no long explanations, just closure, sealed in black text on a white screen. That weekend, Claire dragged me to a local art exhibit downtown. "You need fresh air and new faces," she'd insisted. The gallery was full of strangers, people sipping wine, discussing brushstrokes, pretending to understand the depth of abstract art. I felt out of place, but oddly at peace. Then, as I turned a corner, a painting caught my eye. It was of a woman standing by a window, sunlight spilling across her face. Her expression was unreadable. part sorrow, part strength. I read the small label beneath it. Still here. Something inside me shifted. That woman, she felt like me. Broken, but still standing. A man standing next to me smiled. Beautiful, isn't it? I nodded. It's real. He extended his hand. I'm Noah. Lena, I replied. He wasn't like Ethan. His smile wasn't dazzling. It was gentle. His eyes didn't hold secrets. They held calm. We talked for a while about art, about how people use color to express emotion, about how sometimes healing feels like repainting your life with brighter shades. When I got home that night, I didn't feel guilty for smiling. For the first time, I realized I could connect with someone new without betraying my past. Over the next few weeks, Noah and I met a few more times, for coffee, for long walks in the park, for quiet talks about everything and nothing. He never asked about Ethan, never pried. He just listened, and maybe that's what I had needed all along, someone who listened instead of trying to fix me. One evening, as we sat on a bench watching the city lights flicker, Noah said softly, "You have this look in your eyes. Like you've seen too much pain but still believe in hope." I laughed lightly. "Maybe I'm just stubborn," he smiled. "Or maybe you're strong." I wanted to believe that. I really did, but life has a cruel sense of timing. A few days later, I received a call from Ethan's sister, Emily. Her voice was trembling. "Lena, I don't know if I should have called you, but Ethan's been in an accident." My heart stopped. "What? Is he—" "He's alive," she said quickly. "But it's bad. He was driving late at night. They think he fell asleep at the wheel." The world around me blurred. I sat down, my legs unable to hold me. I hadn't spoken to Ethan in weeks, and now he was lying in a hospital bed, fragile and broken. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and left for the hospital. Claire tried to stop me, but I couldn't. No matter what he'd done, I couldn't just sit at home knowing he was hurt. When I reached the hospital, the sterile smell hit me hard. Machines beeped softly in the background. Ethan lay there, pale, with wires attached to his chest and a bandage around his head. He looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. Like he was sleeping through his guilt. I sat beside his bed, staring at him. Memories flashed through my mind. Our first dance, our first fight, the night he told me he loved me. "Why do you keep doing this to me?" I whispered. "Even now you make it impossible to hate you." His fingers twitched slightly and his eyes fluttered open. "Lena." His voice was hoarse. "You came?" "I shouldn't have," I said, though my hand was already reaching for his. "But I did." Tears filled his eyes. "I thought I'd never see you again. I'm sorry for everything. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I had to say it again." "Stop," I said gently. "You need to rest." He shook his head weakly. "I just needed you to know. I finally understand what I lost." I looked away, blinking hard. "It took an accident for you to realize that. Sometimes we need to break to see what really matters," he whispered. There was a time I would have melted at those words. But now I just felt tired. I stayed there for an hour, maybe 2, until he drifted back to sleep. When I left the hospital, the air outside was cold. I took a deep breath, letting it burn my lungs. I realized something important that night. Closure doesn't always come in words or apologies. Sometimes it comes in watching the person who broke you finally understand your pain. The next morning, I got a text from Noah. "How are you feeling today?" I hesitated for a moment, then replied honestly, "Confused, sad, but lighter somehow." He sent back a simple heart emoji and said, "Healing looks good on you, Lena." I smiled. Maybe he was right. For the first time, Ethan wasn't the center of my story. I was, and I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to live again. The air was colder now. Autumn had painted the city in shades of orange and gold, and the trees that lined the streets looked like they were holding on to their leaves for dear life, just like I had been holding on to the last bits of my old life. It had been 3 weeks since Ethan's accident. He had been discharged from the hospital, and according to Emily, he was recovering slowly. She'd texted me a few times with small updates, but I never replied. I told myself I didn't need to know. I told myself it wasn't my problem anymore. But late at night, when the city grew quiet, and I could hear nothing but the hum of the refrigerator, I wondered if he was okay. One Sunday morning, While I was at a local bookstore with Noah, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Lena? I froze. That voice could still stop my heart. I turned slowly, and there he was, Ethan. He looked thinner, his face pale, his arm in a sling. He wore a simple gray sweater and that same nervous smile that used to melt me years ago. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Neither could he. The silence between us was heavy, like an unfinished chapter trying to write itself. Noah glanced between us, sensing the tension. "You okay?" he asked softly. "I'm fine," I lied. Ethan extended a small, uncertain smile. "Hey, can we talk? Just for a minute?" I looked at Noah, who gave me a nod. "I'll be over there," he said quietly and stepped away, giving us space. Ethan took a deep breath. "You look good. Better than I remember." "Thanks," I said flatly. "You look alive," he gave a short laugh. "Yeah, guess I got lucky." "Lucky," I repeated, my tone sharp. "That's one word for it." He looked down, fidgeting with his sleeve. "Lena, I'm not here to make excuses. I know I said sorry before, but it doesn't feel enough. I've been going to therapy, like I said. I've been trying to understand what I did. And I finally realized I didn't just lose you. I lost the best parts of myself." I wanted to look away, but his words pulled at something inside me. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," he said, his voice trembling, "you deserve to hear it from someone who's finally sober from his mistakes. I hurt you because I hated myself. I thought you were better off without me. But seeing you now, you're stronger. And that kills me, because I know I had no part in that strength. You built it from the pain I caused." I swallowed hard. My chest ached. "Ethan, you're right. You did hurt me. You broke me in ways I didn't think were fixable. But I had to rebuild myself, not for you, not even for revenge, but because I refused to let your betrayal define me." His eyes glistened. "I know, and I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see you once more, to see that you're really okay." "I'm not okay," I said softly. "But I'm getting there. And that's enough," he nodded, smiling sadly. "I'm glad, really." Before I could say more, Noah walked back toward us. He placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, his presence grounding me. Ethan noticed, and for a brief moment, our past and my present stood face to face. "This must be Noah," Ethan said, his tone respectful. Noah nodded. "Yeah, you must be Ethan." There was no hostility, no macho confrontation, just a quiet understanding. Two men who both cared for the same woman in different timelines of her life. "I should go," Ethan said after a moment. "Take care of yourself, Lena. You deserve peace." I looked at him, really looked at him. There was no anger left, no love either, just a deep, quiet acceptance. "Goodbye, Ethan," he smiled faintly. "Goodbye, Lena." And just like that, he walked out of the bookstore, his figure fading into the crowd outside. It felt like watching a ghost dissolve into daylight. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way Ethan's eyes had looked, tired but sincere. I knew he meant every word, but I also knew that love, once broken, doesn't always need to be fixed. Sometimes it just needs to end so something better can begin. When I told Noah about the conversation later, he just listened quietly. "Do you regret seeing him?" he asked softly. I shook my head. "No, I needed to say goodbye, not just to him, but to who I was when I loved him." Noah smiled gently. "You did the right thing." We sat there in silence for a while, the kind that feels safe and unspoken. Then he said, "You know, sometimes we meet people who break us just so we can rebuild ourselves stronger. Doesn't make what they did right, but it gives the pain a purpose." I thought about that for a long time. Pain with purpose. It sounded poetic. Maybe even hopeful. A few weeks passed. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. My first piece was simple. A woman standing under the rain, her face turned toward the sky, her eyes closed. She wasn't sad. She wasn't waiting. She was free. When Claire saw it, she smiled. "You found your piece, haven't you?" "Not all of it," I said. "But I'm getting close." That night, I posted a picture of the painting on social media with the caption, "Some storms come to wash us clean." Ethan liked the post an hour. Later, I didn't delete it, I didn't respond, either, because sometimes closure isn't blocking someone, it's knowing. You can see their name and feel nothing at all. A few days later, I found myself walking with Noah along the pier. The sun was setting, casting golden ripples across the water. I leaned against the railing, breathing in the salt air. Noah turned to me and said, "You're different now." "Different how?" I asked. "You laugh more," he said. "But when you do, there's something real behind it." I smiled. "I guess I stopped waiting for someone else to make me happy." He looked at me for a long moment. "I hope one day someone earns that laughter again." "Maybe," I said softly. "But even if they don't, I'll still be okay." That night, as I walked home, I realized something. Love isn't about forever. It's about moments, moments that change you, hurt you, and teach you. Ethan taught me what betrayal feels like. Noah taught me what healing feels like. But I taught myself what strength feels like. And that was the kind of love I never needed to lose. The winter came quietly that year. Snow dusted the streets like powdered sugar, the air crisp and clean. I always used to hate winter. It reminded me of silence, of things frozen in time. But this time, I found a strange comfort in it. Silence no longer scared me. It had become the sound of peace. It had been 3 months since I last saw Ethan. 3 months of rediscovering the small joys that used to belong only to me. My morning coffee by the window, painting until midnight, reading poetry out loud just because it made my heart feel alive again. Noah was still around. Always supportive, always kind. But something between us had shifted. Not in a bad way, just matured. We weren't rushing toward love. We were walking toward it, slowly, like two people finally learning the difference between needing someone and choosing someone. One evening, I got a call from Emily, Ethan's sister. "Hey, Lena," she said softly. "I didn't know if I should call, but Ethan's moving away." "Moving?" I repeated. "Where?" "Colorado. He got a job there. Said he wants a fresh start." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. "That's good," I finally managed. "He deserves that." Emily hesitated. "He asked me to tell you something." I held my breath. He said, "Tell her I'm grateful she didn't hate me forever." The words hit deeper than I expected. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thanks for letting me know." When the call ended, I stood by the window for a long time, watching snowflakes drift through the dark sky. There was no sadness, no longing, only gratitude. For once, my past didn't ache. It simply was. A week later, Noah invited me to a winter art fair downtown. "You've been hiding your talent," he said with a grin. "Let's change that." I hesitated, but he was persistent. "You can't keep painting just for your walls." "Lena, someone out there needs to see what healing looks like." So, I agreed. At the fair, I displayed 6 of my paintings, all inspired by my journey over the past year. One of them, titled "The Storm That Stayed," showed a woman standing under heavy rain, but holding a lit lantern close to her chest. It caught people's attention. Even the gallery owner stopped and said, "There's pain in this, but also power. You've lived through something, haven't you?" I smiled faintly. "Haven't we all?" As the night went on, I noticed Noah standing by my favorite piece, the woman by the window. It was me, painted from memory, sitting beside the same window where I once waited for Ethan to come home. But in the painting, she wasn't waiting anymore. She was watching the sunrise. Noah looked at the painting for a long time before saying quietly, "You've turned your heartbreak into art, Lena. That's not easy." I looked at him. "It's the only way I knew how to survive." He turned toward me, eyes soft. "You didn't just survive. You changed. You forgave, you let go, and you found yourself again. That strength most people never reach." His words warmed something inside me. "Do you believe in second chances?" I asked suddenly. He smiled. "Always. But only if they're for the right person." That night, as we walked back through the snow-covered streets, Noah stopped under a streetlight. "You know, I think you were meant to meet Ethan," he said. I frowned slightly. "Meant to meet him?" "Yeah," he continued. "He was your storm. He broke you open so you could see who you really were beneath the pieces. And I think I was meant to meet you after that storm, when you were ready to grow again." His words lingered in the cold air like smoke. I didn't respond. Instead, I just looked up at the falling snow and whispered, "Maybe some people enter your life just to teach you how strong you can be without them." He smiled. "Exactly." Over the next few weeks, Noah and I grew closer, not in the dramatic movie kind of way, but in quiet, real ways. He made me laugh again. He listened when I talked about my fears. And he never once tried to fix me. He just stood beside me while I fixed myself. One evening, we were sitting by my fireplace when he asked, "Do you still think about him?" I didn't lie. Sometimes. But not in the way I used to. It's like thinking of a song that used to make you cry. Now it just makes you remember who you were back then. He nodded thoughtfully. "Then that means you've truly forgiven him." "Maybe," I said softly. "Or maybe I just forgave myself for loving him so much." The next morning, I found a letter in my mailbox. It had no return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was from Ethan. My heart skipped, but I opened it carefully. "Lena, by the time you read this, I'll already be gone. I don't expect a reply. I just wanted to say thank you for everything. For loving me when I couldn't love myself. For walking away when I didn't deserve you. You saved me, even if you didn't realize it. I hope your world is brighter now. You once told me that some storms come to wash us clean. I finally understand that. You were my storm, Lena, and my calm after it too. Be happy. Ethan." I held the letter for a long time, tears slipping silently down my cheeks. But they weren't sad tears. They were peaceful ones. For the first time, I understood that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of what was. That evening, I went for a walk by the river. The city lights shimmered on the water and the air smelled of snow and hope. I thought about all the versions of myself that had lived within me. The girl who loved blindly, the woman who cried herself to sleep, and the survivor who finally learned to breathe again. I whispered into the night, "Thank you, Ethan, for the lesson." Then I closed my eyes and let the wind carry it away. When I turned around, Noah was standing a few steps behind me, smiling quietly. "Everything okay?" he asked. I nodded, my heart light. "Yeah, everything's finally okay." He stepped closer, his hand brushing mine. "So, what now?" I smiled. "Now we live." And as we walked back together, the snow began to fall again. Soft, endless, forgiving. For the first time in years, I didn't look back. The first signs of spring came early that year. I remember waking up one morning to the soft chirping of birds outside my window, a sound I hadn't heard in months. The snow had begun to melt, and sunlight slipped gently through the curtains, landing across the sketchbook on my desk. I sat up slowly, stretching as I breathed in the scent of rain and fresh beginnings. For the first time in a long time, my mornings weren't heavy anymore. There was no ache waiting beside me, no ghost lingering in my thoughts, just peace. And peace, I realized, wasn't quiet, it was steady. A few weeks later, I hosted my first solo art exhibition. It felt surreal. Seeing my name on the banner, watching people walk around, studying my work with quiet admiration. Every canvas in that gallery told a piece of my story. Heartbreak, healing, forgiveness, and finally, freedom. One painting, The Sunrise After Everything, stood at the center of the hall. It showed a woman standing on a hill as the sun rose behind her, her arms open wide, her hair catching the light. People stopped there the longest. Some smiled. Some cried. An older woman came up to me, her eyes soft with tears. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It feels like she's not just watching the sunrise. She is the sunrise." That moment stayed with me, because for the first time, I realized she was right. That woman was me, not the broken version who waited by the window, but the one who finally found herself again. After the exhibition, Noah found me outside, sitting on the steps of the gallery with my shoes off and my heart full. "You did it," he said quietly. "You really did it," I smiled. "I think I finally understand what it means to let go, not just of someone, but of everything that hurt." He nodded, sitting beside me. "You've come so far, Lena." "I didn't do it alone," I admitted, glancing at him. "You were there when I didn't even know how to breathe again." He smiled, looking away for a moment. "Maybe that's what love should be, not saving someone, but walking beside them while they save themselves." That made my heart warm in a way I hadn't felt in years. The next few months felt like a slow bloom. Noah and I started spending more time together, not because we needed to, but because it simply felt right. There was no rush, no drama, no fear of losing ourselves again. One night, we sat on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights below. The air was cool and the moonlight painted everything silver. Noah broke the silence. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if Ethan hadn't hurt you?" I smiled softly. "Sometimes. But then I realize, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have found myself. And I wouldn't have met you." He looked at me, his expression quiet but deep. "So, you don't regret anything?" I thought about it. "No," I said finally. "Regret is just love looking backward. I'd rather love forward now." He reached for my hand, and I let him hold it. Summer came with warmth and laughter, two things I had once thought I'd never feel again. I started teaching painting workshops, helping others use art to heal their own wounds. Some days women would come to me with eyes full of grief and hands that trembled with memories, and I'd tell them, "It doesn't matter how broken you feel. There's still color left in you. You just have to let it spill out." Because I knew what it meant to rebuild yourself from silence. A year later, I visited the small cabin by the lake, the one Ethan and I used to go to. I hadn't been there since everything fell apart. The cabin was still there, old but quiet, surrounded by trees and sunlight. I walked down to the edge of the lake and sat on the dock, dipping my fingers in the cool water. Memories came back. Laughter, arguments, confessions whispered under the stars. But they didn't sting anymore. They just were. Pieces of a life that once existed, but no longer defined me. I whispered, "Thank you for the lessons." Then I stood up, smiled at the reflection of the sky in the water, and walked away, this time not looking back. When I returned to the city, Noah was waiting at my apartment. He had a bouquet of sunflowers in one hand and an uncertain smile on his face. "You were gone all day," he said softly. "I needed to say goodbye," I told him. He nodded, stepping closer. "And did you?" I smiled. "Yeah, I did." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Then maybe it's time to say hello. To something new." My heart fluttered, but not with fear. With calm, with certainty. "Yes," I said. Something new. Months passed. Life wasn't perfect, it never is. But it was real. There were days when I laughed until I cried, and days when I just cried. But I stopped hiding from my pain. I learned that healing isn't about erasing scars. It's about learning to live beautifully with them. One morning, Noah brought me coffee while I was painting by the window, the same window that once symbolized my loneliness. He smiled. "You always paint at sunrise." "It reminds me that every day can begin again," I said. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. "And you remind me that people can too." I looked out at the horizon, where the first rays of light touched the sky. And for a moment I felt completely still. No fear, no guilt, no regret. Just gratitude. That night I opened my old journal, the one I used to write in during the darkest days. On the last page I wrote, "To the woman I used to be, thank you for surviving. To the woman I am now, thank you for living. And to the love I found along the way, thank you for being patient." I closed the book and placed it on the shelf, beside a new one waiting to be filled, because my story wasn't over, it was just beginning. This time, written in light instead of pain. Months later, my next art series was titled Becoming Whole. It wasn't about heartbreak anymore, it was about everything that comes after. Joy, growth, peace. And on opening night, as the lights dimmed and soft music played, Noah stood beside me. His fingers intertwined with mine. I looked at him and smiled. "We made it." He shook his head gently. "No, you made it. I just walked beside you." I leaned my head against his shoulder, watching the people move through the gallery. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need to be understood. I just needed to be. Outside, the night sky stretched endlessly, and the city lights shimmered like stars fallen to earth. Somewhere deep in my heart, I whispered to the girl I once was, the one who cried herself to sleep, the one who thought she'd never heal. "You did it," I told her. "You found the sunrise after everything," and she smiled back through every scar and every painting, because she knew The story wasn't about losing love. It was about finding herself,